Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, a security awareness series, episode 164. I'm Chris Hadnagy, founder and CEO of Social Engineer, social-engineer.org, and the Innocent Lives Foundation. And I've been hosting this podcast since I was a wee lad back in 2009. Actually, I wasn't so wee or lad then. I was quite large. I'm a little more wee now, but still not a lad. Anyhow, I digress. I am here with my awesome Scottish co-host, Ryan MacDougall. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris. So I'm Ryan MacDougall. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Social Engineer LLC. I'm also the lead open source intelligence trainer and have taught at multiple years at Black Hat and when DerbyCon was the thing and in private and public classes. And I've been in information security for about 24 years, with the last 9 being focused in security awareness and adversary simulation. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, love to have you here, man. This episode is sponsored by social-engineer.com or Social Engineer LLC. We're a trusted information security company specializing in, you guessed it, social engineering, which means that we love to focus on things like phishing, vishing, smishing, and what we call SE teaming. You can get more information on all those services, what they entail, and how they can help your company on social-engineer.com. You can check it out there, and there's a lot of information on that site. Some exciting news. We're going to be revamping the website to make it much more user-friendly coming up in the next couple months. So just keep checking it out. I know some of you have written in really helpful comments on things that we can improve to make better. We truly do appreciate that. I mean that. So keep sending them in. We're going to be improving that website. Also, if you really love the topic of social engineering, we have a Slack channel. The link for it is in the comments right down below, or you can check it in the show notes if you're listening to this and not watching it on YouTube. And you can join us. We have channels about phishing, vishing, smishing, also psychology. We have a job board in there. We had 7 or 8 people already find employment in different parts of InfoSec just by joining that area. It's just a lot of over 1,000 people in there talking about social engineering in a family-friendly and really kind, leave them feeling better for having met you method. So join us, please. Come on in, ask questions. We're all there to learn. We also want to say thank you to Clutch. They're out on tour right now, so if you're bold and like to go out, you can go see them. But check out pro-rock.com. They give us our music for the opening and closing if you're listening to this podcast. And, of course, we're huge fans. And that brings me to the ILF, because Neil is on the board of that. It's the lead singer of Clutch. If you didn't know that, shame on you. But ILF, or innocentlivesfoundation.org, is a nonprofit that I started that Ryan's a part of, and many others here, that we fight the crime of child exploitation. So our team there helps the law enforcement to look for those who are trafficking children, hurting children, so we can send them to law enforcement to be apprehended. Our work there, we're over 400 cases as of the end of last year. We're doing some amazing things. You can check out our end of year report, which is on the website. Also, there's tons of videos that can help you talk to your kids, talk to your grandkids, and keep them safe while they're having to be on the internet more and more nowadays. Okay, let's get to the show. Today, I'm joined by an old friend, someone I've known for quite a few years, Kathleen Mullin, or Kate is what we all call her. Kate is an information security practitioner with over 30 years of experience. And I first met her way back in the day at the SE Village at DEF CON. She's currently a CISO at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Kate has been a CISO at various organizations, including startups, publicly traded private equity, not-for-profit, and governmental entities. Throughout her career, Kate's volunteered and participated in maturing information security as a profession. She also volunteers at ISC Squared and ISACA, and has been a member of the ISACA CGEIT Certification and Credentials Committee and a chapter president. She's also a featured international speaker and panelist. She has a BSBA from St. Joseph's and an MBA from Florida Metropolitan University. And the thing I'm most proud about is she is a master level social engineer, which meant she has been through APSE and MLSE and passed them both with flying colors. Kate, I can't believe after all that, we now get to have you here being interviewed on the SE podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here. I've been listening to the podcast for more years than I will admit. And it's just a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off with where you came from, because that's a pretty big bio, and you've done a lot in your career. And then you came to all these classes, and I see you all the conferences. So how did you get started in information security?
I actually kind of backed into it. I've always been a bit of a geek and a nerd, proudly, and have played with computers. I actually started on the accounting side. I went into tax. I was really bored by it. Went into accounting full time. Was bored by that. Then I I did budget for a little while. That's make-believe numbers. Really couldn't handle that. Make-believe is not good for me. Went back to accounting. And the problem with accounting is, debits on the left, credits on the right. So from there, I moved to audit. And audit is great because auditors opine and I'm opinionated. So that worked for a while. But part of the problem is that you are expressing what is wrong with systems and trying to convince management to change things. And a lot of times audit reports are ignored. So I moved into IT. And IT is great. But again, not being very effective at change. So that's when I went into information security. And I really, truly love information security. But as I learned more and more about information security and the application of technical controls, I realized that there were some elements that were missing. And those elements included the human side. And, had some wonderful penetration testers, and they started teaching me about things like, oh, you should start picking locks and things like that. And it's like, what? And the more I did that, it's like, oh, this is cool. And finally made it out to DEF CON and SE Village. And it's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to be good at this. And it is actually a hobby for me. I was not a very outgoing person. I was actually very shy. And the great thing about social engineering is it makes those of us that are not actually A personalities appear to be A personalities, and it helps interact with other human beings. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
So it sounds like through that journey, you've had some time to analyze when security awareness programs are not being effective. Because it sounded like some of the things you didn't like is just talking about things, but not being able to make a change. So what are some of the indicators to you when you're with a company or looking at a company and you see that things are ineffective? What tells you something's ineffective?
Well, so there's a lot of different ways, and part of it is how are you measuring training and how are you delivering it? And part of it is that kind of audit background. So what I have seen in some organizations is they will actually deliver the same death by PowerPoint presentation year over year with the same questions. And everybody knows what the answers are. And they're working on other monitors and this is just a get through compliance checkbox activity. And then, I've seen other organizations where it's this just canned training again. It's the same training for every employee. And every employee has a different job. And there are different things they need to be aware of. And then sometimes you'll see trainings that are somewhat specialized and somewhat have an industry's terminology sometimes. But the big thing, again, is what is a risk for an executive and what is a risk for somebody in payroll are completely different. And I have seen organizations where the executives don't actually take the training. It's a compliance requirement, so their assistant takes it. So if you actually trace back the IP address for the person who signed it, now we've got a violation because, now I've got shared password credentials, and I have a violation because I've got somebody who is at risk not taking it, and the training that I was trying to give them has nothing to do with their job. So part of it is we've got systems that don't measure, and then you get programs that are better, but they don't necessarily speak to the different learning methods. One of my roles was Pinellas County Schools, and my mother, my grandmother, my sister, all teachers. And adult learning is very, very different. And there is a difference in how you learn depending on your age bracket. And doing things that are not interactive, that are not relevant, you don't teach them. And so security awareness training needs to be multifaceted. It needs to be more than just the month of October. And it needs to be culturally appropriate. So if you're a person that learns by hands-on, or if you're a video, a visual learner, or if you're an audio learner, it needs to be something that actually speaks to you. And one of the things that I have seen is canned programs, and there are a ton of them, and canned programs where if the person doesn't learn, we're blaming the recipient instead of looking at, is the content wrong or is the delivery method wrong? So I like to actually, when I see things where we have violations because the training program didn't address it. Part of it is going and speaking to the user and trying to understand how they got caught. What happened? What is the deficiency in my training that I need? Because if I have a training program and I've taught you all these things and you're still failing, is it you or is it me?
So that's a great point. Can
Sorry,
you
go ahead,
also, for the kind of, you're talking about these cookie cutter assessments or training modules. Do you think that has any effect on the people who are giving that training? So if you're just keep giving users the same training, do you think that's any type of reflection based on the security awareness team itself?
So part of it is, Robin Dreek talks about trust and trust relationships. And one of the things is you're trying to build trust, and people start to question your competence when you are doing a lot of those cookie cutter approaches. And some of the cookie cutter phishing tests actually destroy trust. And those are the ones that concern me, because the whole philosophy of leaving people better than they were when you met them, I learn from all of these conferences, and I learn from the people I interact with, and it is a very important thing. So when I'm doing training, when I'm doing phishing tests, part of the things that I teach my teams are, you want to make sure that you don't hit a fear response. Don't send something out that says you're going to get a bonus and then not give one. Don't send one that says their payroll's been compromised when it hasn't. Those create these visceral gut fears. I mean, you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you're just hitting that safety response. There are other ways to teach people that somebody's going after this than actually testing to that specific thing that is going to get them in the gut, and they'll never trust you again. Or if they do, you will have to do extreme efforts.
I love that message, Kate. To me, that's such an important topic that I don't think we talk about enough. I had a question though. because I want to get back to that, but I had a question because you were talking about the way that good training looks. One of the questions that we get often is, okay, that sounds awesome. How do I roll that out to an organization that's 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 people? How do I do that thing you said to make sure that everyone's getting the kind of training they need? But I have an organization that's spread over the whole US or maybe global, and it's tens of thousands of people.
So I will tell you that there are some limitations in my experience. There really are. The largest organizations that I have worked with and consulted with have been about 35,000 users. But that's a good size.
That's a good size.
And some of the industries, like, when you're talking about an airport, it has so many different businesses within it, even though it's small. So part of it is the larger organizations can afford they can afford to actually develop some of the training themselves. So it's one of those really big organizations. They really should be looking at their education departments and their marketing departments. But what I have found for me is partnering with the marketing department, partnering with the education department, partnering with talent, and partnering with IT. So, yes, I love getting a budget and giving out swag, positive reinforcement. I believe positive reinforcement. Heck, I used to bribe my kids. So, what's the difference with this? I mean,
it's not a bribe. We call it motivation. We call it motivation, financial motivation. I do it all the time. My daughter accuses me of bribery. I say it's financial motivation.
Yes.
Bribe sounds negative. I like financial motivation.
Yes. Financial So, well, I like swag.
Yeah.
But, you get swag that you can regift. Anyway, part of it is email, splash pages, those screensaver pages, newsletters, intranets. There are many different things that you can do. And then there are, lunch and learns and encouraging people to join organizations like InfraGard and go to B-sides and go to different conferences. And I mean, when we were in person, I would bring all my lockpick stuff to lunches and we'd just sit around picking locks. I mean, getting people interested in things that have nothing to do with their jobs. Part of it is we would advertise for lunch and learns, what the topic is. And, there's people from throughout the organization that, they don't want to be a CISSP. They don't want to be one of these other things, but this specific topic is relevant. Mm-hmm. So part of it is, we are talking security awareness and you are unaware. And then my favorite thing is WIFM, what's in it for me. I believe that you need to teach people how to secure their homes. With Log4j, the message that we sent out to everybody in our organization included things like, what is it that you are supposed to be doing at home? What is it you can tell your friends? What is it that you can tell your family so that those people are actually doing everything to be safe at home as well as at work? Because they flow together. And by the way, somebody who's compromised at home, they're not going to focus on work. They're not. If they lose all of their children's pictures because of a ransomware attack where they gave money and they still didn't get the stuff back again, that is going to be so distressing that they're not going to be able to focus on the things that they need to focus on for you. And we need to care about our employees more than just the work context.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that communication is vitally important to information security, and also having someone that can fully focus on this job. So it's not something they do part-time for the organization, that actually cares about the people, not just getting the results, is important. Am I hearing you right?
Yes. And the thing is that if you can't have that designated person because your organization is too small, within information security, we normally, best practice is you have somebody who's focused on risk. Well, guess what? That person who is focused on risk is really good at understanding what those risks are and starting to talk about what is the business need? How are we driving to the business requirements, and how are we enabling the business? And if we can communicate how enabling the business means empowering our employees with this information, because we are all tech enabled in our lives, from the time we are, when we're looking at very small children until, you're 100 years old and you're on the computer. I think that it is important that we stop doing this really carved out, we only care about what happens at work.
I love that.
And also that we really care about more than just security. We need to care about the business and empowering the business.
I love that message because I'm sorry.
So
go ahead.
You're in the healthcare industry, right? So
yes.
So what are your major concerns being in that particular industry, and how are you dealing with those?
Well, realistically, ransomware is the biggest terror. It is, and you'll hear these ransomware groups saying, "Oh, we hit healthcare by mistake," and it's like, no, sorry, I don't buy it. The thing that happens most often is phishing being used for PHI breaches. That is fairly common. It is more of an embarrassment than anything else, because in the United States, healthcare information is meant to be shared so broadly to so many different healthcare professionals. But having a breach it's on the news, and those are the things that we historically have focused on. Ransomware, I'm sorry, with a ransomware event, you're talking about people dying. You really are. Mm-hmm. And some of the hospital systems have taken weeks, and some systems months to restore. And it is very difficult, especially in the time of COVID, to be protecting these systems. And so because it's phish, that is usually the entry point. Protections and training related to that is important. But when you're talking about people that are working incredible hours and doing incredibly heroic measures, being able to do this in a way that they can actually be able to absorb it, it really has to be very bite-sized. very bite-sized. I mean, and there are times when, like when we do phishing tests periodically, and there have been times when I've like, we're just not doing it this month. These people are too overwhelmed. It's not the time to do this. It's just not. So you really do have to look at your entire environment and what's going on. And it's just like, no, and we're, Log4j, any testing that we were doing in those last few weeks, it's like, no, we've got things that we really need to focus on. So it is a scary time to be in healthcare, because healthcare was never incredibly well funded in terms of, because look, if you can spend the money to buy a system that will provide better patient care, or you can replace out IT infrastructure, what are you going to pick? I mean, it's a business choice, really. And the fact that there are people in this world that, their cultural beliefs are different, and it's okay to them to close down a hospital system. It is a tough, it's just a tough time to be in this business.
So we actually hear a lot about smishing attacks becoming kind of more prevalent. Are you seeing that reflected in your industry? Oh,
yes. Well, and part of it is people are in the news all the time, and on LinkedIn, and you change organizations, and all they need is a single phone number. And some of this is they're trying to get confirmation of accounts, and they're leveraging it. And it's one of those, people when they get smished, they don't understand where it comes from. And you see these smishing attacks that are purporting to be executives. And then there are smishing attacks that are actually directed against board members. So there's this whole range of up and down type of smishing that's going on. And I see that as something that we don't train well to. And especially because in the world of BYOD, they're not devices that we control. So you can only recommend. And we do because we care about our employees. But it is something that a lot of times, well, Chris, you've had this happen where, you get hooked and it's like, oh, that gut feeling. It's like, yeah, I know. I shouldn't have done that, and how quickly can you recover? Because most people do not want to change their phone numbers. They really don't.
Yeah.
And there's simple cons that we can teach them. Yeah. Don't go out and buy gift cards. But there are some other things that get a little bit tougher.
Yeah. This is, what I love about your messaging so far is it sounds a lot like you have to care for your people. You have to spend time thinking about them, not just at the job, but at home. I can't tell you how many times I've given a speech for a company and I'll include something about keeping your parents safe or keeping your kids safe. And people will thank me specifically for that in a corporate speech because they're like, oh, I didn't think about applying this to my kids. And I find that you can make information security so much more personal when you don't just focus on how to keep my company safe. It's how to keep your family safe, and you apply that, especially now that a lot of us are working from home. And a lot of us have home offices, so we're with our kids and our families while dealing with all of these problems you just mentioned.
Yes.
So when it comes to like some of the suggestions you gave today, some of the things that we talked about, what are some action steps that any company, not just healthcare, but any company that's listening to this podcast can start doing right now?
So I think that it is important that you have metrics and you measure how effective your training is. More than just, are they taking it? Is that training actually working? And if it is not working, look at how you're delivering it and look at, are you delivering something that actually is something that people care about? The best things that ever happen to me when I deliver training is when I have people that reach out to me and want more information, or they say, that's great. It's, oh, I didn't know about securing my router at home and my roommate broke into my work account and now I know how it happened. Those things that technical people don't even think about. The layperson doesn't even know that there's a default password, and sending out an article about that. So looking at humanizing your training, looking at, is it effective? And if it's not effective, just incremental steps to show that you care. And by the way, last year was the year of employees separating from work. And this year, the focus needs to be on retaining employees. And part of employee engagement is you need to care about them. And it can't be fake. It's got to be real.
Yeah. Well, those are some beautiful steps. It's interesting. A lot of times when we talk to people about this topic and we ask that question, a lot of the steps are almost programs or things you can put in place. But you just gave, just looking at our list here, because we take notes on this so we can put it in the show notes. You have 4 steps. So having metrics to measure and train, humanize your training, make sure it's incremental, and care about your users for real. Wow. Like none of that has to do with implement this tool or put in this flashy button or do this. It's all literally the human part that you started this whole conversation off with, talking about focusing on the human part of security. It's wonderful.
Well, the thing is that once you focus on that human part, then you can start looking at the technical pieces for the gaps. Mm-hmm. But start with what are your business needs?
Yeah.
They are human resources. They're actually human. Pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought up some of those phishing themes, because this actually has been a topic probably about 5 or 6 times on this edition of the podcast, because we've seen some horrific stories of people using phishing themes, like that one case where they were told there's no money for bonuses this year, and then they sent a phishing email at about, oh, we got money for bonuses. I can't imagine how people must have felt so demoralized to find out that that was a test, especially they did it in December, when everyone's worried about holiday presents and things like that. You can understand why there was people wanting to leave companies and go find a different job. That's horrific.
Yes. And for information security to be responsible for that.
Right. It really.
That's the reduction of trust you're talking about.
Yes.
How are they going to want to listen to that department going forward if they're so capable of that type of dehumanization?
Well, and the thing is that sometimes they burn our entire profession. So those people move to another organization. And so part of what you're overcoming is the history that employees have. It's those damages, they can be lifelong.
That's actually a really good point. Like someone leaves that company now, they go to a new company, but they enter that new company already hating information security department because of their previous experience. So now they come in and they hate you, and you're one of those people who does care, but they're like, nope, I don't like you already because your title has information security in it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
I didn't think about that. That's, that is long lasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So think of the responsibility we have in this industry to humanize our subjects, our people that we're working with, our fellow employees, so that way they, no matter where they are, they view this as actual something useful for them and not something as an adversary.
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone once on the podcast used this phrase saying, become an advocate, not an adversary. And I thought, ooh, that's good. Right. That's a nice way of putting it. We ask everybody on this, since you've listened, you know this question's coming, but, we have 2 questions that we like to ask at the end, which is, your favorite books. What books, and they don't have to be about information security. It's just any books that you've read recently. You're like, hey, this is a great book. Someone needs to read this.
So I'm actually going to give you 3 different threads. Okay. Most recently, these are just completely lightweight. They're called the Murderbot series by Martha Wells.
I have
very light
right
reading.
Here.
Yeah.
I have them sitting right here. Right? That was such a great book, by the way. I had to pull them out.
They're great.
I had to pull them out. I bought them all because they're so great.
Yeah, they're plane ride books. They're great. Sorry, I always have to plug Code of Trust with Robin Drake. I try to live that. I really do. And I share that a lot. And then it's actually kind of a textbook. It's called Enterprise Security Architecture. It's by Sherwood, Clark, and Linus. And what happens is that book is all about enabling business. So it is security architecture, but it is a different framework, and it's highly used in Australia, Canada, and in the EU. Not as prevalent here, but it's a great book. It really is.
What a nice eclectic list, right? They're all different. And I want to say you're in great company, because the Murderbot series was recommended to me by Neil Fallon. So right away, you've just taken like 18 steps up the ladder of likableness just because of that right there. I mean, it's amazing.
Okay.
Anyone who doesn't know, I'm a little bit of a fan. I'm a tiny bit of a fan.
Small.
Small. I mean, maybe like one of his minor fans, you know. Anyhow, okay, sorry, I got sidetracked thinking about Neil. Who would you consider to be your greatest mentor? Because like you said, you came from a wholly different side of the industry to end up here. I'm sure you have many. You have just a couple you can mention that you think helped you get to where you are today?
So it's very cliche, I know, but my father.
Oh, that's
my
not cliche.
Father,
that's wonderful.
And I am blessed because he's still alive. My father was an Annapolis grad and a classmate of John McCain. He was a naval pilot on a carrier and an engineer and had a lot of professions. And he has been a terrific mentor my entire life.
Wow.
And by the way, this is the gentleman that taught me how to use a soldering iron, and he and I, when I was young, were tinkering with early computers and programming, and he's just always been really rock solid and there for me.
What a great story, though. That's amazing. How old is your dad now?
86.
Oh, that's great, though.
And he's got stories. Oh my gosh, that generation, just phenomenal. And he has had really interesting career path. He was one of the inventors of the solar shield for the Apollo space missions.
Wow, really?
And there's Teflon coating on belts that are in planes and other equipment. He was one of the inventors of that. And at one point owned and operated a hotel in the Bahamas, and his guests included people like Lady Bird Johnson. I mean, just wonderful stories. Wonderful stories.
Hopefully you're writing all these down so someday they could be in a book or something, because that don't even match. Like, I helped make something for the space shuttle, and I ran a Bahamian hotel. What? Yeah. They don't like those two paths don't cross really.
Yeah. Well, and the way you got there, it's great. And it's one of those, when you have somebody like that in your life as a mentor, it's like, I'm not even competing. I'm just going to go do my thing.
But that explains a lot about you, how you can go from accounting and auditing to CISO of big companies. That's pretty amazing, Kate. That's awesome. Yeah. What a great mentor to have. Is there anyone else?
The thing is, you should always love what you do.
Yeah.
You just should always love what you do. And if you find that you don't love what you're doing, you should find something else.
It's a message we keep hearing.
Yes, we hear that a lot on this podcast.
Yes.
And now in this industry, I heard recently in an article that there are 526,000 jobs needed in the U.S. alone. So I tell people, if you aren't happy with what you're doing, there's probably a company out there that's looking. And it's not like other times, or maybe even other industries, where if you're in a job, just keep it because there's not a lot out there. There's 526,000 employees needed. You could probably find something that will make you very happy, doing something that will make you very happy in information security if you're looking for that. Yeah, that's wonderful. Were there any other mentors you wanted to mention?
Actually, there have been so many. I mean, I can give credit to different aspects of my life for different things. I mean, you and Michelle did so much for me in terms of social engineering. I have had, David Linus from the SABSA Institute, somebody that I've known for decades as well. There are just so many people that I couldn't list them all. I really couldn't.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that feeling, because when someone asks me that question, I'm like, I could sit here for days talking about all the people that helped me to get where I am right now. So I understand that. But I love that story about your dad. That is really cool. And he sounds like he'd be a fascinating guest, to tell you the truth.
Oh, actually, yeah, you probably would.
Some of those stories sound pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
So Kate, if people are interested in just finding out like what things you're working on, I know you're always doing something different. I mean, you've given speeches at SE Village, which they can find on YouTube. I know you've written, you're now at a different company than you were last time I spoke to you. So if people want to follow you and connect with you and just get some of feedback and talk about some of the things you talked about here today, what's the best way for people to connect?
Actually, I think that LinkedIn is probably the best way. I do have a Twitter account. I am occasionally active, but not always. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out and connect with me. Just because there's just so many forms of media.
Yeah, that's good. And I think we have we do here in the notes, we have your LinkedIn. So we'll put it in the show notes for anyone who's, wants to connect with Kate. Kate, honestly, the 4 steps are going to be so, influential for people that listen to this, these 4 tips. I really love this point. I may actually, have some folks here write a blog about this just because this is it's different than suggestions we normally hear, which involve around tools and other things. So it's nice to have this message of really focusing on the human part of cybersecurity and helping people to care more about the people that they're training, as that really does come through in the way that you do it. And I can tell that it's something really personal for you. So thank you so much for all of this today.
Thank you. It's been a joy speaking with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So for everyone watching, please, thanks for joining us today, and tune in next month. We'll be joined by cybersecurity expert Ted Harrington on the Security Awareness Series. Don't forget to check out social-engineer.com. Check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. So until next month, we'll see you.